Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's story, my entitled mother demands I give my farm property to her because my sister needs it more than me since she is pregnant. Let's dive right into the story. So I moved out the second I turned 18. For the entirety of my life up to that point, things have been unfair. Specifically, things have been unfair with my sister. My mother clearly favored her more, other than the bare necessities I would pay for all of my own stuff. Which would be fine if she also hadn't forced me to give her every penny from the job I had from age 16. I had a room, but it was down in the basement, always cold and damp, and most of my belongings would get moldy or ruined in some way. My sister, however, lived in my parents' old room and was showered with anything she wanted, even if my mom could not really afford it. But after all, the money they were spending was mine. My father left not long after I was born, which is partially why I was not treated well. They thought it was my fault that he was gone. But when I turned 18, I got a letter in the door from him. I hid it before opening it. It was a check for $20,000. I was shocked. I packed up everything I owned, which was not a lot, hailed a cab and left. With the money, I was able to rent a small apartment in the city nearby. I did not know what my plan was, but I knew anything from now would be better. I got in contact with my dad and he had told me that my mom had become abusive towards him and he had to leave. When he tried getting custody of me and my sister, she pressed countless charges on him, which resulted in a restraining order. For the next 2 years, I heard nothing from my sister or mother and continued to work on myself and kept in contact with my dad. I saw him as regularly as I could. I ended up saving a lot of money and buying a beautiful farm property near a river a couple of miles away. I've always dreamed of living on and owning a farm. Don't get me wrong, it was hard work, but I loved it so much. My dad loved it too, and he came to stay all the time, which was amazing because as our relationship grew, I realized what a great man he was. Who knows how he ended up with my mother? Cutting straight to the point of this, one afternoon I got a knock on my door, and the moment I opened it, my sister and mother burst into the house, said house being the farmhouse, which was rather large and already furnished, and my sister exclaimed, "Oh wow, this will be perfect," slamming the door behind her. "Isn't it lovely?" my mother asked her. Neither of them had glanced over at me yet. "It will need a good dusting, but yes, I think it's great. And we will remove all the animals, of course. Their fields will make an amazing golf course." My sister began wandering around, smudging her finger on things to check for dust. Hello?" I asked. "Hello, my dear," my mother replied, not looking at me, as she continued perusing the house. "Why are you here?" I asked. Clearly I was going to have to spoon-feed them for answers. "Your sister is gonna be staying here." My mother glanced at me and then with little emotion in the face. "Oh, is she? And why is that?" I once again asked. "I'm pregnant and I'm not raising my gorgeous baby in the small grovel we live in at the moment. So I will move in here and you can move back home or something." My sister was the one to reply this time. No, he will have to go elsewhere," my mother responded, shooting my sister a glare. "Yeah, whatever." My sister rolled her eyes. It was news to me that she was pregnant, but I was not surprised. She always got everything she wanted and was not the sharpest tool in the box, so I doubt she ever bothered with contraceptives. "You are not gonna be living here, this is my house." "Honestly, how did you even find me?" I moved closer to them. "What do you mean, she cannot live here? She is your sister, and we found where you lived through your Instagram." My mom had taken a step back. "She has not been my sister for the past 3 years, where she never made an attempt to contact me. And you're not even asking for one, nor if she can stay in a room for 2. You're just demanding I give her my whole property. No way." "Brother, you cannot do this to me. I am pregnant and need somewhere to raise this baby. You have to give me your house." My sister stamped her feet as she said this. She might be 27, but she was still so immature. "I had enough of your brattish attitude when I lived at home. You're not bringing it here. You have never done anything for me, so why in my right mind would I give you my house, which I paid in full for?" "Because..." my sister started wailing. "Son, don't be rash. Just hand over the keys and be on your way." My mother gave me her classic scolding look. "Get out before I call the cops." I ground out through my teeth. I couldn't believe the cheek they had. "You would call the cops on your family?" My mother was aghast. She was currently rubbing circles on my sister's back. "No, of course not, but you two are just a pair of random wenches who entered my home without permission. Now go!" I pointed to the door. After a little more back and forth, they finally left, shouting insults at me as they went through the threshold. I was fuming. I thought I had escaped those tyrants, and although I knew one day we would meet again, I hoped it wouldn't be so soon, and certainly not under such circumstances. I rang my dad and told him everything that had happened, and he immediately packed up some of his things and came over, telling me he would stay with me and so be here if they decided to show up once more. And yes, they did show up again, but not in the same way as before. Me and my dad had decided the next day to go out for a meal to take our minds off of things, and when we got back we saw that the windows to my house were smashed in and the lock to the door was broken. We heard voices inside, but before going in, we called the police and waited for them to get there. We explained that we had just gotten back and this was the state the house was in, and soon they were inside. "This is the police, come out with arms raised." The culprits came out of their hiding spots alright, and although I kind of had a feeling it was them, it still shocked me when they came out sheepishly holding up their hands. "What's going on? I was trying to have a bath in my new home," my sister screeched. "Did you do this damage?" one officer asked, pointing at the windows and door. "We had to, we hadn't been left a key," my mother responded, as if that would explain and sort out everything. "So you don't own this house?" the officer asked. "Well, not officially, but my daughter lives here now, and my son bought this house, but she's pregnant, so you see, she deserves the space more. I'm sure you understand, this is all a big misunderstanding." My mother gave them her sweetest smile. The officers looked between each other. "You're joking, right?" "No, I'm absolutely not. Now I gather you have the power to force him to hand over the keys, etc. And what are you doing here?" She had just spotted my father. "We were having a meal. I'm staying here with him for a bit after he told me how you barged in and started claiming rights to his home." She suddenly took off running and was about to lunge at my dad when an officer caught him. "This man ruined my career. And he created 2 spoiled rotten children for me to deal with." "Mom, I'm not spoiled, I'm pregnant," my sister wailed. The officers got my mom in handcuffs and led my sister outside, and they were both placed into the cop car. The officers then came over and asked if I wanted to press charges for the damages, which I did. So then I pressed charges for the damages to the house and the emotional stress they caused. All in all, they had to pay a fine for damaging my house and property, and of course they ended up behind bars for a while, which I appreciated. Some of you might be asking how my sister did considering that she was pregnant. Well, it turned out she lied about that too. And the next one is a cooking revenge story. And if you have watched until here, by the way, I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video and maybe even leave a comment, as that would help my channel tremendously. The next one starts like this. I'll start by saying that I take my career and food safety very seriously. Even if I was livid over a customer, I would never do anything gross, dirty, harmful, etc. to their food, and I would shut down someone else trying to do the same. I prefer my revenge to be petty but noticed. The restaurant I work in is located in an upscale area, and as a result our customer base is full of entitled, elitist, insufferable people most days. If you have a problem with your food, that's fine. But if you are an a-hole or being petty, you will get served by Chef Petty, the king of petty. So now to the first point, the so-called crouton debacle. So this pair of older women came in one day and they were immediately rude to the hostess and server from what I was told. So the server came to give me a heads up that they seem like a problem. Sure enough, they each start with a Caesar salad and send it right back. Their reason? Some of the croutons were big and some were small, and they would like croutons that were all roughly the same size. Heard. I put the new salads in the window. One had equal-sized very large croutons and one had equal-sized very small croutons, like smaller than a sugar cube. Apparently, they learned not to be petty because they shut up and ate them. In a pickle over pickles, we had a gentleman come in and order one of our burgers. He said extra pickles, we normally do 3, so each extra was 3 more and 12 total. When it went to his table, he said he wanted more, I gave him 3 more and he sent it back. At this point, it was time to shut this stupid stuff down. I took all of the pickles and scooped through the pickle bucket to find 20 to 25 of the smallest slices I could find. They were all about dime-sized. I loaded his burger up and I didn't come back. For reference, his original 12 pickle order was more than these 20 to 25 pickles. The next one, could I get some more onions? This regular always comes in and orders her burger with an obnoxious amount of onions. Normally we do 2 rings and she initially always asks for about 30. No BS, and then proceeds to send the server back 3 or 4 more times for a small plate of about 15 more. It's disgusting, and one day we were busier than usual when she tried to pull this again. Rather than having to keep stopping to accommodate her, I took the biggest red onion we had, pushed it through the slicer, did not separate the rings and put the entire onion on her plate. The server laughed her rear off when the lady left because she did not touch any of the onions. Apparently, she took great joy in making the server run back and forth, and that was a buzzkill for her. What am I supposed to do with this? We had a regular nightly customer place the same order for pickup 15 minutes before closing every night for 4 months straight. We hated her because she treated all staff she dealt with like crap, made ridiculous demands, and then no matter what, would send it all back to be refired even though nothing was ever wrong with the order. One particular thing she would do is order 6 shrimp pasta dishes and request 3 additional portions of shrimp for each one. But she did not want the shrimp on top like it comes, she wanted it on the side. No big deal, other than how she wanted it. She didn't want it all together, she did not even want the 4 total portions for each order together. Nope, she wanted each of the 4 portions for each of the 6 orders separately packaged. That takes a real long time to do, way more than necessary, all because she gets off on being difficult. So I was not having it one night, we knew she was coming, so all total I knew I needed 288 shrimp. Which she got individually packaged in 288 ramekins. She was pissed. She said, what am I supposed to do with this? GM said make sure they're all there, so she proceeded to count 288 ramekins as I watched from the kitchen with a grin. After that, she had no problem allowing us to start packaging it the way it was made to be and even started tipping. They eventually stopped coming, wins all the way around. And the next one is titled, Did I Betray My Wife? So, my wife and I are both 32. Since we got married and moved in together 5 months ago, my wife has simply not made nearly enough food for me. This is not kind of a situation where I'm constantly agitated at her for incompetence or anything like that. Honestly, I would be more than happy to microwave a burrito. I would be more than happy to whip up a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But the point is, I can't. My wife has, every single night of our marriage, done the same thing. She will make me a tiny dinner. I'm talking like a Chinese chicken salad with 30 grams of chicken and 10 leaves of lettuce arranged fashionably with dressing. When I finished eating, I'm still hungry because for a 230-pound man who works a physical labor job, it's not enough food. At first, I tried to openly communicate with her, but she always took it horribly. She would adopt a 1,000-yard stare and then begin talking about how incompetent she is and how she cannot even make her husband a proper dinner. I would try to calm her down with, oh honey, that's not the case, I just eat too much. Or, don't worry about it, I can make a bit more. I would just try to be overwhelmingly positive, but it never helped. She would always get incredibly disappointed in herself, cry and or take it out on me. Then she would make the exact same amount the following day. After the communication route failed, I tried to eat her dinners as is. And seriously, it became hard to sleep at night due to hunger and I lost 7 pounds in the first month. Eventually, I figured out my own system. On my way home from work, I started swinging by a fast food restaurant and getting myself a burger. I would basically pre-game her meals with some more calories. I figured it was win-win, as what she doesn't know cannot hurt her and I could have my fill of food. I would eat on my way home, walk in the door, pick at the salad or quinoa or homemade mac and cheese she made, compliment her for delicious cooking and later dispose of the wrappers discreetly. 2 days ago, I was on my way home and in line at a drive-thru, my mother-in-law was coming out of the restaurant. She ran over and greeted me. I asked her in a humorous way not to tell her daughter where she saw me because she would take it badly and she agreed, but then she narsed on me anyway. Or maybe it is narked, I'm not exactly sure. I got home to a furious wife who demanded details. When I provided the truth, she got extremely angry and looked legitimately hurt. I'm not good at handling confrontation, and I feel like I betrayed my wife in some way. Was I wrong here? Comment number 1, it's a little concerning that she goes full passive-aggressive when you say something to her. It sounds like she has a really hard time when her carefully crafted mental image of herself is even slightly challenged. NTA. Comment number 2, NTA. Honestly, I find all the "what's to stop you cooking" etc. comments so off the mark. Would you say that if a man was controlling a woman's diet and guilting her for stopping for fast food or making a sandwich? Clearly OP and his wife have a setup where he does a physical job and she mostly cooks, nothing wrong with that. She is controlling his food intake and refusing to adapt to his dietary needs. She applies avoidance tactics when reasonably confronted. She is likely not eating enough herself for dinner based on the description of a typical meal. All signs point to an eating disorder. OP, get your wife some help, please. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think OP is being the a-hole here or not? This one is titled Beautiful Petty Revenge. I've been enjoying the Schadenfreude here for a long time and I am pleased to finally have something worth sharing myself. My wife came to me with some unexpectedly happy news, and I feel it meets the expectations of petty revenge readers. Some backstory: my mother-in-law has spent her life cultivating a career of emotional terrorism, visiting it upon her children and grandchildren with extreme prejudice, along with most anyone who gets close to any of those aforementioned. She is narcissistic, bipolar, and just a mess. My brother-in-law, wife, and kids all have some manner of trauma traceable to my mother-in-law's influence. My father-in-law, comparatively, has been a saint of a man from what I can tell, aside from losing marks by way of enabling his wife's behavior over the years. Father-in-law helped us purchase our home in the same neighborhood many years ago, when we had trouble with a loan, with plenty of passive aggression from mother-in-law on the matter in the background. It was bought outright with the equity of father-in-law/mother-in-law's home. We pay the mortgage towards their equity loan monthly. And by the way, ripe stars, I know maybe in this situation OP did not have any other choice, but if I had such a terrible mother-in-law, I would certainly not be in on some kind of deal like that. It would always feel like you're dependent on this woman. But anyway, this has also led to mother-in-law referring to us as her tenants, passing herself as the owner of the home, etc. in some really embarrassing ways. Father-in-law has passed away recently. Mother-in-law has a long history of making everything, from her son's coming out to her daughter's divorce, about her. This, as expected, has been an endless wealth of drama from my mother-in-law. My wife has been taking care of things around her home while she wails as the grieving widow. My wife recently discovered that most of the house bills were unpaid and that some were headed to collection soon. My wife gathered up the bills and made spreadsheets presenting them to my mother-in-law. Her first reaction was to wail incoherently. When my wife suggested ways to resolve the debt, my mother-in-law became hateful towards her. "You just want to get your hands on our money." Now, father-in-law did extremely well in planning his retirement. He managed a portfolio that left him and his wife close to $750,000, and they have enjoyed a modestly extravagant decade doing literally anything they pleased. Father-in-law managed all the finances, and so they fell into slight disrepair in his absence. Anytime it came up, cue the hysterics, hence my wife's offer. My wife, who has ever been the dutiful daughter despite the constant put-downs and harassment from her mother, suggested that she explore a power of attorney so that my wife could consolidate her finances, get a lawyer to manage the estate and see to any bills and arrange for a will if she so wished. After a week of silence, my wife received a rather vitriolic message from mother-in-law: "I'm doing the power of attorney, but I'm giving it to your brother." I neglected to mention that any prior whisper of a will was met with daggers from mother-in-law, and her favorite phrase on the matter was, "Don't even ask, you got yours." We are definitely not banking on getting a cent of inheritance. We made our peace with it, no problem. But it is salt in the wounds my mother-in-law has dealt my wife, brother-in-law, and the kids over their respective lifetimes. Enter my brother-in-law. He was the firstborn, and he has never put up with any of the crap my mother-in-law has tried to sling at him. He grew up shielding my wife from the bulk of her outbursts, at least partially, and calls mother-in-law out on her behavior. As a result, a neat little phenomenon occurred where, as my wife seeks mother-in-law's approval and affection, my mother-in-law seeks the same from brother-in-law. Brother-in-law does not like the raw deal mother-in-law has been giving my wife. He takes the power of attorney and consolidates all the debts, sets up the estate, etc., and in doing so, he digs into all the accounts. It turns out father-in-law had set aside money for his kids and grandkids in addition to his retirement, to the tune of about $200K each. Mother-in-law seems to have had no intention of passing it along. Good thing is, brother-in-law is now the acting executor, and at first, guys, I read executioner, thanks to the power of attorney. So after seeing the care of mother-in-law to the end of her days and the management of her estate unbeknownst to her, brother-in-law paid off the entirety of the outstanding equity on mother-in-law's home. This paid off our home, and he released access to the trusts belonging to him and my wife and put the trust for our kids in my wife's name. We now have the potential to be completely debt-free before the end of the year. This is life-changing.
My wife is over the moon, and obviously so am I. It will be all the sweeter if my mother-in-law decides to crack at my wife with that "you got yours again." My wife can just smile and nod and know that it is really true. Well-deserved comeuppance for her and brother-in-law after what they've had to endure under mother-in-law all their lives. I hope you enjoyed.
And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.